Today on Locked On Rockies, an underwhelming season continues for Kris Bryant. When is he going to become the Rockies' quote, aircraft carrier?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 20th day of July in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here is talk about the big old purple pinstripes each and every day. Proud to be your first listen of the day. We are free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you all sorts of wonderful Rockies talk here. Also on Sirius XM and the Sirius XM app. You can find us and all your Colorado Rockies coverage and play-by-play there on the Sirius XM app and Sirius XM as well. Today on the pod, I'm going to talk a little bit about Kris Bryant and an interesting question posed to the Rockies mailbag there of the Denver Post, Patrick Saunders' mailbag. I'm going to focus on a good couple of questions from someone out there in the Pacific Northwest about German Marquez and Kris Bryant, but I'm more specifically going to focus a little bit more on Kris Bryant as the German Marquez situation is going to be one to monitor and one that's going to be really interesting as we get closer to the offseason, especially when you count the injury that happened this year. But we're going to focus on Kris Bryant. We're also going to talk about the Rockies. It's a tough road stretch for this Rockies team, a Rockies team that's been trying to fight their way back towards 500 at home. But, man, it has not been the same case yet again for the Colorado Rockies on the road. They are currently a road team with a record of 14-33, going up against the Miami Marlins team that's 30-18. So that's just we'll dive into that as well. But I wanted to dive into some of these questions from the mailbag here on the Denver Post, Colorado Rockies mailbag here. German Marquez's future, Bud Black's job security, and trade deadline thoughts. We won't focus so much on the Bud Black stuff as much as I want to focus on a couple of these Kris Bryant questions here from that were proposed to him, and we'll circle back to the German Marquez portion of this question later on. But Theron from Eugene, Oregon asks Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post a couple of Kris Bryant questions. In nearly every interview I've seen KB do, he says something along the lines that because he was elite early in his career for minimal pay, he deserves every penny of his current contract. That only works if the Cubs are paying him. Does he really not feel any pressure to be on the field and producing a level benefiting his salary? Secondly, do you think the Rockies would pull the trigger on a bad contract swap, ideally for a starting pitcher, or are they committed to KB hitting singles in the handful of games he plays? Here is the answers here from Patrick Saunders. As for Brian, in the interviews Saunders has had with him, he's never come across as entitled. However, I do believe that he's earned his that he thinks he's earned his big contract, 7 years, $182 million, based on his baseball resume. That's fine, but to your point, he certainly hasn't played like the cornerstone of a franchise or as the team's aircraft carrier, as General Bill Schmidt referred to him. So far, I haven't seen much fire or drive from Bryant. And James Williams follows up with a question for Patrick Saunders here with, given Kris Bryant's excellent performance since joining the Rockies, is this the worst contract in franchise history? Momfort must think we're all stupid. Man, this guy didn't lay off James Williams here. Momfort must think we're all stupid to try to convince us to believe he couldn't pay Nolan Arenado, a likely Hall of Fame player in my book, but magically had a similarly sized Brinks truck ready for Bryant. And Patrick responds with this: James, you have your facts wrong. Momford never said he couldn't pay Arenado, if you recall, which is correct. He never did say that. The Rockies signed Arenado, and then to the 8 years, $255 million extension. It was Arenado who forced his way out of Colorado, essentially demanding to be traded. I don't blame him. In the 3 years leading up to the February 1st, 2021 trade, Colorado signed one major league free agent, an over-the-hill Daniel Murphy. Arenado wanted out because he saw the direction the franchise was headed. Yes, but also that wasn't the point. But I think the front office, and I think the key point there that Saunders mentions there when you're talking about that part of it is the free agents, the lack of acquisitions of free agents. But Saunders goes on and says Monfort gave Bryant big money because Monfort wanted a marquee position player to replace Arenado, and make no mistake, it was Monfort who was the driving force behind bringing Bryant to Colorado. Yes, the Rockies have had, we know the history of the Rockies' infatuation with Kris Bryant, but it's plain and simple. We talked about this a little bit before, but big series just happened, and we saw the one big home run. But the key thing that I think sticks out from Saunders' comments there is at the end of his answer. So far, I haven't seen much fire or drive from Bryant. This is disappointing. This is something, and it's kind of evident. He doesn't seem to have a bunch of energy on the field. He doesn't seem to be playing a version of baseball that you would say looks inspired, looks energetic. The way he was playing some defense in right field in the series against Houston wasn't necessarily. There's nothing that screams MVP. There's nothing that screams cornerstone, and he is performing under league average as a below WAR player right now. Plain and simple. Kris Bryant is not playing up to his contract value, and he's not really showing the what's going on. I mean, I don't know. It's the health issues are one thing, but he's just being so forgetful right now. And I don't know how a player of his caliber can be okay with being someone that fades off into the distance. We haven't had a lot of marquee signature Kris Bryant Rockies moments. There's really none to think of outside of a couple of hot starts and a couple of hot stretches, on top of the fact that the guy is not hitting for power. And I mean, it's hard to kind of think about it because he got his money. At the end of the day, Kris Bryant wanted to get his money, as he should. He got the biggest payday. It was the most successful thing for him. Sure, to go to Colorado. But he also chose to came here. You need to embrace. It's weird how much he's not the face of this team. He's never been made the face of this team. He's never bought into being a Rocky. I don't think he has. And to be honest, maybe that's partly because he hasn't had ample time of healthy playing time to get on the field that does it. But it's a bummer that you go out and make one of the biggest acquisitions on the free agent market, and not only does it not pan out in terms of production on the field, it's just doesn't turn out in any part of the production. He's not necessarily an exciting interview. He's not necessarily playing with some pizzazz or flash. There's nothing outside of being a good-looking man that makes him like have some sort of just kind of eyeball factor. He's just kind of it. I don't know. It just feels like he's kind of just a ghost playing right field. He's just someone. I mean, Kris Bryant's supposed to be the anchor of this team, and he's not even on top of not even finishing or playing full seasons so far with in the 2 years that he's been with the Rockies. He's not even performing nearly as well as he's gotten more games, and he still hasn't reached some statistical numbers that he reached last year. He's only scored 27 to 28 runs, so that's close there, but he's 5 doubles short in almost 21 more games, in 21 games, more games played this year versus 2022. He's only driven in 8 more. Let me see. Yeah, 9 more runs this year in comparison to last year, and nearly an extra 100 at bats. Not quite there. And the batting average is down, OBP is down, slugging is down, OPS is down, OPS plus is down, one of the lowest in his career outside of the pandemic shortened season. Kris Bryant has not finished his season with an OPS plus of under 110 his entire career outside of the pandemic shortened season. And it's just hearing that even Saunders himself said that a guy that's around the team every day isn't seeing the drive or fire doesn't make me feel good that there's a guy that's just out there kind of riding. It seemed like just riding his way out and he got his money. But at the same time, I mean, he's just, there needs to be more of some, I don't know what it is. I don't know what needs to happen for Kris Bryant outside of he needs to be the MVP. He needs to be the all-star that he used to be. And if it's just kind of a ho-hum mentality or still adjusting to this, or I don't know what's going on and on the mental side, but I want to fully buy in and embrace Kris Bryant, the Rocky, but he's just still been so forgettable this entire time that it's just so disappointing. And you certainly can't refer to him as an aircraft carrier. He's not at this point, he's not a franchise cornerstone. He is because of the money and the contract that you've paid to him. But in terms of overall notoriety and impact on the Rockies, Kris Bryant has not gotten there and has been very underwhelming at this point. And I'm really hoping the second half of the season is the Kris Bryant Rockies breakout party, because hopefully that'll break them out into a more, bring a little bit more of passion, bring a little bit more of the fire, bring a little bit more to the ballpark. But we'll have to see. Let's dive into a really tough road test for the Rockies here coming up against Miami as they get ready to play a series against the Marlins, a big weekend series, a 4-gamer here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Let's dive into that coming up here in segment number 2. But before we do that, got to tell you about our friends at eBay Motors. eBay Motors is all about making the championship team, and it's about making sure every player is a perfect fit for a championship team. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. When you shop on eBay Motors, and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. We're bringing you all your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here, is talk about the Rockies each and every day. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for being an everydayer out there. Thank you so much for making us a part of your commute, your day, whatever you take Locked On Rockies. You can find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. You can also find us on Sirius XM and the Sirius XM app. Don't miss out on that. The Rockies are in an interesting situation here. They are the exact team Miami is probably hoping to see for rolling in to their ballpark, their Lone Depot Park in Miami, because Miami has scuffled out of the All-Star break and losing 6 in a row now. They just were swept by the Cardinals, certainly had opportunities in those games. And the Rockies are heading on the road after winning the series against Miami 3-1 there at Coors Field earlier in the season. Rockies now, I'm sorry, I said it was a 4-game series. It's only a 3-game series, so no game tonight. I apologize. But anyway, Rockies are heading to Miami, and it has not been kind to them. And this is on top of a Miami team that's 30-18 already at home. According to mcubed.net here, I'm getting the all-time win-loss record. We've used this website before when we talked about this thing, because it's still very prevalent here. Overall, the Marlins got 118 and 109 against the Rockies. So they have a slight edge over the Rockies here. And this is the big difference. This is the big jump here. When the Miami Marlins against the Rockies are 73 and 39 against the Rockies all time in Miami, compared to being, and it flips though a little bit, where the Miami is 45 and 70 at Coors Field. So when these two teams match up, where they're playing certainly has had a massive influence on how these two teams fare against each other. And this is a Miami team that's certainly going to want to be keeping up this historical record of dominance against the Rockies there at home, because they need to start turning things around. It's so many points now, and so many points for the season for teams are going to come with the Rockies at the schedule and say, you got to handle business. The Rockies have already been able to get the job done against Miami there early in the season, but they're a completely different team now here. And especially as we see a couple more people listed on the injury report. Speaking of Kris Bryant, an injury report, he is listed as day-to-day as of yesterday. Same with Randall Grichuk. So more injury issues with Kris Bryant. Randall Grichuk apparently been dealing with that groin issue after he was playing in that Yankees series. I don't think we've seen him since then. So Rockies, the being banged up here isn't going to help them. But it's a scuffling team and if you're going to come in and flip the script, flip the narrative, and change things around historically, now's the time to do it. I mean, especially, if the Cardinals are struggling, the Cardinals have been a team that has not done well of late, and that granted these were all away games here for Miami, but if the Cardinals can do it, so can you. I mean, that especially when you looked at how well you played. But it is the two sides of the coin. The Rockies' away record in general is abysmal. They are 14-33 away from Coors Field. We mentioned that a couple of times already. So when you're looking at this being this is absolutely in the looking ahead and diving into the schedule, a quote unquote tough road test for the Rockies here, just to start, because you do go to Washington, where you should be able to navigate the damage, to figure out how you can handle things, and you should be able to get a split. Miami's looking for the sweep, though. Miami is going to be looking to do some damage, and it's a Miami team that though you hear about the struggles on offense for Miami, and a team that certainly can use more offense, they keep winning those one-run ball games. They still have a lot of pitching depth, and in a lot of categories, though, the Rockies and Marlins are similar, except the Marlins have a little bit more in the batting average. But this is a team that kind of matches up similarly across the board. The massive difference, though, here when you're looking about comparing these two teams is that the pitching staffs there. As it's now that I'm looking at it, it's pretty surprising here how similar these two teams are. Average for the Rockies, team average 251 compared to the 265 batting average of the Marlins. Rockies have driven in 416 to the Marlins 407. Miami's out hit the Rockies 886 to 814. Teams are basically tied at home runs. Rockies got 92, Miami's got 91. What do we think is going to be the big factor in this? What did we talk about was a big impact when teams were close, when the Rockies were playing the Reds in that series? Who's going to hit more home runs? That'll be another moment of a difference maker here in that series. OBP of 312 for the Rockies compared to the Marlins 323, and both teams slugging 402. Here's the big difference, though, and here's where the Miami has the benefit, and here's why Miami has been so good in 1-1 ball games. Here's their team pitching line here: 4.11 ERA, a whip of 127, 297 walks to 915 strikeouts. Opponents are batting 245 against Miami pitching. The Rockies, on the other hand, have a team ERA of 5.62, a whip of 1.53, 357 walks compared to 683 strikeouts. So the near 50-50 there, that ratio, it feels like, when it comes to walks and strikeouts, that's the massive difference there. Again, I just want to bring up this stat, the difference here. For 915 strikeouts to 297 walks for Miami. So they aren't giving out as many they're not giving you the free bases. And Miami is looking for just that, a team that can, if they get the timely hit, a team that has a higher team batting average, a team that is approaching 900 hits on the season, they're going to be looking for those free base opportunities. So the Rockies have to limit the walks, and they have to outslug the Marlins if they're going to want to have a chance in this one. But as we know, the Rockies going on the road Always a tough thing to do. We'll see how we'll see how the Rockies do. We'll see how they navigate Miami, which, like we said, a very, very tough place for them to play. The Rockies, I've only won. The Rockies are 39-73 against Miami in Miami. So it's never fun to watch them go to Miami, but let's hope it is this time. Wanted to go back to one more question from the mailbag here from Patrick Saunders mailbag, back in the first question here of it. There's more in that piece that you can go check out about Bud Black and second half expectations. And Patrick talking about surviving that crazy elevator incident where a couple of media members got stuck in an elevator for a little bit. But we are going to focus more on the Rockies' number one starter, or at least it depends on who you ask, German Marquez, coming up next in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you all your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. You can also find us on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Don't miss us out there, or all your Rockies play-by-play action. Just search Locked On Rockies or Colorado Rockies, taking you to where you need to go. Shout outs to all my everydayers out there. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Hey, also in this mailbag here, Patrick gets a question about German Marquez and what the Rockies might do. And here is Patrick's answer. I believe the Rockies will offer Marquez some sort of deal. There's a club option for $16 million next year, but with Marquez coming back from Tommy John surgery, there's no way Colorado will pick up that option. But could they offer him a 2 or 3 year deal for decent money, maybe $10 million a year? But the bigger question is, will Marquez want to stay? He's only 28 and might want to see if the grass is greener at another ballpark. I think German Marquez would sign a short-term deal if the Rockies don't offer him an extension. I think he would like to prove himself, establish himself as the greatest Rockies pitcher of all time, which he's statistically close to being. So if you look at a lot of categories, if you look in a lot of areas, German Marquez is going to be synonymous with good to excellent Rockies pitching as we look back on it forever, even in just the fact that he has still so much of a career yet to go. I think that $16 million option after Tommy John is going to be something that has to be reconsidered. And this is going to be one of the top Rockies offseason storylines. I think the Rockies want to keep German Marquez. I think the Rockies really want to keep at least, German, Kyle, and, maybe I guess, and Gomber in there. And we'll see with Senza too, with the health stuff. I mean, I think the Rockies really bought into those guys after the success they have seen in Rockies uniforms. But I think above all, I think the Rockies are very value German Marquez a ton. So, but the question of will German go to another team? I think it's a very real possibility. And the Rockies convincing pitchers or enticing pitchers or bringing pitchers back that say they want to come back to pitch in Colorado hasn't always happened. So that option certainly is very, very real. And if the Rockies, we already know, we're seeing it now. And if the Rockies lose German Marquez without having the, adding depth or building up the pitching depth behind him, losing German Marquez is just going to be like losing John Gray. You're going to lose a quality pitcher, and that can be at the top end of some rotations, and you're in replacing him will not be easy. It will be very difficult for the Rockies to do. The Rockies' pitching future is so murky that I don't really think you can afford to lose German Marquez. But the question marks surrounding the player option and what type of deal and how long, the Rockies won't come to a long-term deal, I think, with German. I don't think after this. I think it'll be a short-term deal. Like Patrick said, and I don't think it's out of the question that I think German wants to, and this is just totally just me guessing. If it was me, I'd want to come back for a year after the Tommy John, get my strength under me, have a solid season. And because he's not intimidated by the Coors Field issue might be a thing, but he's pitched here already. It's not the factor of being traded here in the season or blah, 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 blah. It's not going to be as big of a deal, and build that up And then you can go out there maybe and hopefully, best maybe for both worlds, the Rockies can flip at a deadline, get something back. Herman can go pitch for a contender, and he organizes a long-term, he gets his money that way, because Herman, being 28, is going to, he's looking for that next big contract. He's looking for that next big thing of money. So that's going to be an important factor there. Hopefully, and if I had to say it, I think the Rockies and Herman Marquez come to a deal that has him pitching in purple at least for a little bit next year. Could he potentially be traded and things like that after? Yes. But I think the Rockies want him to establish himself and maybe see where they can go and the type of stuff that they can do with him. And I think Herman wouldn't be against pitching at Coors Field again, depending on where the Rockies are at and depending on some of the moves the Rockies make as well, because that could be an influencing factor as well. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Patrick Saunders for his mailbag and all his great work over there at the Denver Post. You can check it out there. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Why don't you go check out the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs podcast for more Colorado sports coverage. And you can find us on your favorite streaming service. You can find us on YouTube, where we're so close to 500 subscribers. Help the show grow by subscribing on YouTube. Be part of the show. Let us know about your Rockies hot takes in the comments on the YouTube section. And until next time, folks, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.